Brielle Carter was a 38-year-old ICU nurse, worn thin from long shifts and the silent weight of racism she'd learned to carry quietly. But on a cold Friday morning, her heart stopped, and in those few minutes, she left her body and stood face to face with Jesus Christ. What he showed her wasn't clouds or angels. It was a raw, soul-shattering truth about race, silence, and love that would change everything she thought she knew.
My name is Brielle Simone Carter. I'm 38 years old, a pediatric ICU nurse in Atlanta, Georgia. Most of my days started and ended in scrubs. I'd wake before the sun, kiss my daughter on the forehead, and head into a hospital full of small patients fighting big battles. I loved my job, still do, but it wore on me in ways I didn't admit out loud. The kind of tired I carried wasn't just from long shifts. It was soul tired, the kind that lingers even after sleep. I grew up in church. Sundays were non-negotiable. I believed in God. Still do. But somewhere along the way, that belief started to feel more like something I carried in my pocket than something alive in me. I prayed when things were hard. I thanked him when things went right. But I hadn't felt close to God in a long time. There was also something else, a quiet, constant tension. Being a Black woman in my field meant smiling through certain comments, biting my tongue in meetings, pretending not to notice when patients' families trusted my white coworkers more. I didn't always speak up. Sometimes it just felt easier to survive the day than explain myself again. I pushed those things down, told myself I was being too sensitive. But deep down, I carried that weight. And I had no idea it was about to crack open. It was a Friday, just before sunrise. The sky was that heavy blue that comes right before morning breaks. I remember thinking I should have called in. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours. My chest felt tight, but I brushed it off as stress. I'd been running on caffeine, adrenaline, and instinct for weeks. My daughter had a cold. My mom had called twice about bills. Work was short-staffed again. I didn't feel right, but I kept moving. Driving to the hospital, I remember gripping the wheel harder than usual. My arms ached. There was a strange ringing in my ears. I told myself I just needed to get through the shift. That's all. Just one more day. I never made it to the parking lot. It happened in seconds. My vision blurred. My foot slipped off the brake. A horn blared. Then nothing. No crash, no pain, just silence. I felt myself float. That's the only word that makes sense. Float. Like I had slipped out of my own skin and was watching myself from a few feet above. My car was on the shoulder. A man had stopped and was yelling for help. Someone was shaking my body, but I was already somewhere else. And instead of fear, I felt stillness. Like the noise of life had finally been turned off. There was no panic. No confusion. Just quiet. I saw my body slumped in the driver's seat, eyes closed, mouth slightly open. It should have scared me, but it didn't. I wasn't in pain. I wasn't cold. I wasn't anything, and yet I was more aware than I had ever been. Everything around me looked brighter, sharper, like real life had always been a little out of focus, and now I could finally see clearly. 2 nurses from a nearby urgent care ran toward the car. One of them, a woman I'd trained years ago, started chest compressions. I remembered her name, Tasha. She was shaking, crying, doing everything right. Another person was standing by the passenger door, whispering a prayer. I couldn't hear the words, but I felt them, like they wrapped around me somehow. Then something shifted. It wasn't up or down. It was inward, like I was being drawn into a place deeper than space or sky. It wasn't a tunnel. It was more like being pulled through layers of light and silence. And somewhere in that pull, I knew I wasn't alone. I wasn't scared. I just knew. I was leaving the body I had always thought was me and heading somewhere I had always belonged without realizing it. I don't know what I expected, maybe light, maybe clouds, but what I saw first was a presence. He stood in front of me, still as peace itself. He looked like a Black man. Rich brown skin, tight curls, strong eyes that held a kind of sadness and joy I'd never seen together before. But it wasn't just his face, it was the way the space around him felt. Like everything in the universe had stilled just to make room for him. He smiled not with his mouth, but with his whole being. My soul recognized him before my mind did. And then, slowly, his features began to shift. His skin tone changed. His hair softened. He became older, then younger, then something beyond age. At first, I was confused. Then I understood. This wasn't disguise. It was revelation. "Why do you keep changing?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He looked at me with warmth that felt like home and said, "Every soul sees me in the language of their spirit." I didn't need him to explain. I just knew. He was showing me that he had always been near, always understood me, always met me where I was. Not once had he come to judge, only to love. His presence wasn't just beautiful, it was familiar. As if I'd known him before I was even born. Jesus didn't take my hand. He didn't have to. The moment I looked into his eyes, the space around us shifted again. We were no longer standing. We were surrounded, bathed, in a realms that pulsed with feeling. It wasn't visual. It was emotional. And I wasn't watching anything. I was feeling it all. First came the shame, quiet, aching. It belonged to white Christians who wanted to speak, but were too afraid to say the wrong thing. Their silence wasn't hatred. It was fear. Fear of being judged, misunderstood, pushed away. I felt their hearts, tight, conflicted, desperate to do right but frozen in uncertainty. Then came the grief. Deep, bone-heavy grief. It belonged to black mothers like me. Mothers who kissed their sons goodbye and held their breath until they came home. Mothers who taught strength and survival, who carried fear as part of the morning routine. I felt their prayers, their anger, their fatigue. The silence hit next. It was cold. It came from those who wanted to help but didn't know how. Their hearts were open, but their lips were shut, unsure where to begin. And then came something older than me, older than this country. The sorrow of ancestors. I felt the weight of chains, the hunger for dignity, the stolen names, the songs that became prayers. It ran through my veins like memory I didn't know I had. Jesus stood beside me, silent but present. And every emotion passed through me like fire and water. I didn't observe it. I became it. It was a baptism, but not of water, of empathy. And when I wept, I knew it wasn't just for me. I saw it as clear as anything, a chain. It wasn't metal, but it was real. Heavy, pulsing, alive. Each link throbbed with emotion, not forged by fire, but by memory. And every link carried a phrase. I'm tired of explaining. They don't get it. It's not my fault. You people are always angry. I don't talk about race. They'll never understand. Each sentence echoed like a wound spoken out loud and passed down. Fear, guilt, pride, resentment, silence. They weren't just feelings. They were ingredients. The chain didn't just wrap around one group. It wrapped around everyone. Black, white, brown, tightening, bruising, dividing. And the worst part? Most people didn't even know they were wearing it. Jesus looked at it with sorrow, not shame, not anger, but heartbreak. This isn't just racism, he said. It's a spiritual contract, passed from soul to soul, signed by pain, sealed by silence. I stood there, stunned. All my years of frustration, of trying to ignore it, fight it, explain it, reduced to this visible, spiritual truth. We were all tangled in it. And the only way out wasn't blame or retreat. It was breaking the contract. Someone had to break it. Someone had to choose love over the chain. Jesus turned, and suddenly I saw scenes unfolding like memories I'd never lived but somehow knew. Not grand stages. Not headlines. Just quiet moments, full of power. A white mother in Nebraska, kneeling by her bed every morning before her kids woke up, whispering prayers for unity. No one knew. She'd never spoken at a march or posted a hashtag. But her prayers reached heaven like songs. Then, a black pastor standing outside his church in Alabama. Someone had vandalized the doors with slurs the night before. I watched him run his hand across the paint, close his eyes, and say, "Lord, don't let my heart turn hard." He walked into church that morning and preached on forgiveness, with tears still drying on his face. And then a little girl, maybe 8 years old, biracial, sitting at a kitchen table, speaking softly to two adults locked in years of silence. "I just want us to love each other again," she said. "Please." Her voice was trembling, but her heart was louder than all their bitterness. "These are my saints," Jesus said. "They don't wear titles. They don't seek credit. But they are building the bridge. One prayer, one choice, one brave word at a time." And I knew then, the healing wasn't loud. It was faithful, quiet, real. I blinked, and the world shifted again. In front of me stood something breathtaking, not a building made of stone or wood, but a living sanctuary. It pulsed like a heart. It shimmered with light. But when I looked closer, I saw what it was made of. Every wall, every beam, every glowing surface was shaped by something deeply human. Forgiveness given when it wasn't deserved, hard conversations started in love, meals shared across old divides, silent prayers offered for someone different than you. It was beautiful, alive in a way no church building ever could be. This, Jesus said, is the sanctuary of reconciliation. I stood there, still, overwhelmed. "Every conversation builds this," he said gently. "Every 'I'm sorry' lays another stone. Every moment of humility strengthens its foundation." It wasn't just a place. It was a record. A living echo of every brave step someone had taken toward healing. I could feel the cost of it, how hard it was to build, how fragile and sacred it remained. Then he turned to me. "Will you be part of this?" His voice wasn't demanding. It was inviting. I didn't feel guilt. I felt possibility. Like this sanctuary needed more hands. Not perfect ones. Just willing ones. I swallowed hard and whispered, "Yes." I couldn't hold it in anymore. The weight of everything I'd felt, everything I'd buried, rushed to the surface. I dropped to my knees in that glowing space and sobbed. "Lord, I've been angry," I said. "So angry. I've judged people before they ever opened their mouths. I've shut down conversations before they could begin. I've made assumptions and carried bitterness like a shield." My voice cracked, and I've been silent too. I've looked away when it got too hard. I've chosen comfort over truth. I expected silence, or maybe correction. But instead, Jesus knelt beside me. He didn't scold me. He didn't quote scripture. He placed his hand over my heart, and all I felt was love. "You were hurting," he said softly, "and no one taught you how to carry that hurt without it becoming a wall." Tears streamed down my face. "You weren't wrong to feel," he continued, "but you were never meant to carry it alone." Then he looked at me, not through me, but into me, like he was speaking to the deepest part of who I was. "You are not the wound," he said. "You are the witness. And now you are the warrior." I didn't feel condemned. I felt released. For the first time, I felt free. Jesus stood and lifted his hand, and suddenly I saw them, white people, but not in the way I'd been taught to view them. Not as enemies. Not as saviors. Just people. Souls. And what struck me first wasn't power or arrogance. It was fear. I saw a young white man in a church parking lot, holding a sign for justice, but shaking, unsure if he was doing it right. I saw an older white woman scrolling through social media, heart aching over what she saw, but fingers frozen over the comment button, terrified of saying the wrong thing. I saw teachers, neighbors, coworkers, all carrying something heavy they didn't know how to name. Guilt, confusion, fear of being labeled, fear of being dismissed. Jesus watched with me. "Fear is the enemy," he said. "Not them. And I understood then, some silences weren't hate. They were hesitation. Some withdrawal wasn't apathy. It was a longing to help, tangled with the fear of making it worse. They didn't know where to step, so many chose not to step at all. They're waiting, Jesus said. Waiting to be told it's okay to try. That mistakes won't cost them their place at the table. My chest ached. I'd spent years thinking silence meant they didn't care. But here was Jesus, showing me the truth. Many did care. They just didn't believe their voice would be welcomed, or worse, that it would cause harm. Healing, Jesus said, starts when both sides risk discomfort in love. Not performance. Not blame. Not shallow peace. But real love. The kind that listens. The kind that forgives. The kind that reaches back across the divide, even when hands are shaking. I saw them differently after that. I saw hope. It happened fast. One moment, I was standing beside Jesus, full of clarity and weightless peace. The next, I was falling, rushing back through that space of light and memory and feeling. And then the pain hit. My chest burned. My body screamed. Lights. Voices. The cold sting of oxygen in my nose. I was back. I heard someone cry out, "She's back. She's breathing." I blinked hard, trying to focus. Nurses surrounded me, some I recognized, some I didn't. But it didn't matter. I saw their souls before I saw their faces. Everything had changed. Not outside, inside. The same hospital walls, the same scrubs, the same steady rhythm of care, but nothing looked the same to me. I saw light in people, even when they were tired, even when they were sharp. I saw burdens behind anger. I saw longing beneath silence. I saw souls, broken, beautiful, waiting to be seen. And I knew my mission. It wasn't to make people feel guilty. It wasn't to preach or perform. It was to heal. To help others see what I had seen. To name the wound and offer the medicine. And that medicine was love, real, patient, uncomfortable, holy love. I hadn't just survived. I had been sent. If you've listened to this far, I want to say this plainly. Racism is not just a political issue, not just a social struggle. It is a spiritual wound. A deep one. Passed down, held tightly, fed by silence, fear, and pride. And I've seen with my own eyes it cannot be fixed by blame or debate. It can only be healed by love. Not a soft, easy love. A strong, uncomfortable love. The kind that listens when it's hard. The kind that asks questions instead of making assumptions. The kind that forgives, even when it still hurts. The kind that tells the truth and stays at the table after it's told. Jesus showed me that Black people carry strength this world has tried to break. He showed me that white people carry fear they often can't name. And he showed me that none of us were meant to be enemies. We were made to be healers, bridge builders, witnesses to a better way. Whether you're Black, white, or somewhere in between, your voice matters. Your presence matters. Every act of reconciliation you choose becomes a brick in something holy. A sanctuary this world desperately needs. So here's my question for you. Jesus didn't show me enemies. He showed me instruments of healing. Now I ask, will you be one?